Section 6.3 Interactive Assignment Objective 3. For the past 106 years, a certain state suffered 24 direct hits from major Category 3 to 5 hurricanes. Assume that this was typical and the number of hits per year follows a Poisson distribution. We're going to complete parts A through D. First question is asking us, what is the probability that the state will not be hit by any major hurricanes in a single year? So, if the random variable x follows a Poisson process, then we can use the following probability rule to compute Poisson probabilities. P of x is going to equal mu to the value of x over x factorial, which is times e to the negative mu, where mu is equal to lambda times t. Okay, so again, mu is equal to lambda times t, and e is approximately 2.71828. Now in this problem, we first need to find lambda, which is the number of hits per year. So in order to find lambda, we're going to do the following. We're going to take the value of 24, because that's the direct hits, and then we're going to divide it by the years. So 24 divided by 6 is going to give us the following, 0.2264151. Now, do not round this number because you have to use it in a calculation. If you round this number, then you're going to miss some of the numbers in your calculation. So you want to keep it the same. Okay, and then what we need to do is we need to figure out how to find mu. Well, mu is taking lambda and multiplying it by t. So what do we know about t? Well, we know that t is equal to 1 because we're talking about a single year. So therefore, we're going to find mu. And now mu is going to equal lambda, which is 0.2264151. We're multiplying it by 1, and therefore we're getting the value of 0.2264151 to be the value of mu. Okay, so now we're going to use this formula to find the probability when the mean is 0.2264151, so we know that that's what represents the mean. Now, what does the value of x represent? Well, x represents 0 because it's saying in the question, what is the probability that the state will not be hit by any major hurricanes? That means that x is going to equal 0. So now, using this formula, we're going to plug in our values, knowing that the mean represents the number that we found, and x is going to represent the value of 0. So let's go ahead and put that into our formula. So we know that x is equal to 0, and we know that mu is 0.2264151. So we have 0.2264151 to the 0 power divided by 0 factorial. Well, anything to the 0 power is going to be 1. 0 factorial is also 1. So 1 divided by 1 is going to give you 1. So it's going to be 1 times e to the negative 0.2264151. So plugging this into our calculator, okay, we have second and then e, and then we're going to put in negative 0.2264151, and that gives us the following, 0.797380, and then we're going to round that to 4 decimal places, which then gives us 0.7974. Thus, the probability that the state will not be hit by any major hurricanes in a single year is 0.7974. Let's verify our solution, and there is the answer. Now, the next question says, what is the probability that the state will be hit by at least one major hurricane in a single year? So, we're looking at least. Now remember, when we're talking about at least, we want to use the complement rule to obtain the value for an at least probability for a Poisson process. So, at least is the same thing as x, which is greater than or equal to 1. When we talk about at least, we need to take 1 and then subtract the opposite of greater than or equal to. Well, the opposite of greater than or equal to is less than. So it's going to be 1 minus the probability of x being less than 1. So the numbers that are less than 1 is going to be 0. It doesn't say equal to 1, so that means we're going to take 1 and then subtract p of 0, which we found in the previous example. which is 0.974. So we're going to replace P of 0 to be 0.7974. So 1 minus 0.7974 gives us 0.2026. Thus, the probability that the state will be hit by at least one major hurricane in a single year is 0.2026. Let's verify our result. We can see here that it says the probability is 0.2026. Now the next question is this unusual? Well, remember that if this number is greater than 0.05, then it would not be unusual. Now if it's less than 0.05, then it would be unusual. This number 0.2026 is greater than 0.05, and therefore it is not unusual. So that means our answer is going to be no. Okay, next question. It says, what is the probability that the state will be hit by at least 3 major hurricanes in a single year, as happened several years ago? Okay, so again, we're going to use the Poisson probability distribution function and formula to find the probability that x is greater than or equal to 3, because that represents at least 3. And so therefore, we're going to use the complement rule to obtain the value for an at least probability for a Poisson process. So we have the probability of x being greater than or equal to 3, which is equal to 1 minus the probability of x being, what's the opposite of greater than or equal to 3? Well, it's less than 3. So then what does that mean? We're going to take 1 minus the quantity, so you can see we have brackets here, the probability of 0 plus the probability of 1 plus the probability of 2. Now again, we're not including 3 because this is less than 3, not less than or equal to. So that means we need to find the individual values of when x is exactly 0, when x is exactly 1, and when x is exactly 2. So we're going to plug those values in. So we have 1 minus, we have mu to the power of 0 divided by 0 factorial, because that represents x, times e to the mu, right? Plus, we have mu raised to the 1 power over 1 factorial times e to the negative 0.2264151. And then plus, again, we have mu raised to the 2nd power over 2 factorial times e to negative 0.2264151. And then what we're going to do is we're going to plug each individual value into our calculator. We already found P of 0 in our previous example. So we're going to have 1 minus bracket, which we got 0.7973870. Now over here, we have this number raised to the power of 1 over 1 factorial. So the way we would solve that is the following. We know that we have 0.226451, and then we're going to multiply that by e to the power of negative 0.226451. Okay, so when we do that, we should get 0.180540466. Okay, and therefore we get that result. And then likewise over here, you should see that we get 0.2264151 squared. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in our calculator. So 0.2264151, and then we're going to square it. Okay, and then when we square it, we're going to divide it by 2 factorial. Well, 2 factorial is the same thing as 2 times 1, which is going to give us 2. So we're going to divide that by 2. So now that we get our answer, we're going to select times, because it's going to be our answer times, and then e to the power of negative 0.2264151. And then that gives us 0.020438544. Okay? So now we're going to add all these up using order of operations. So when we add those all up, we get 1 minus 0.999836610. And when we take 1 and subtract that, we get 0.001633990. Rounding this to 4 decimal places gives us 0.0016. Thus, the probability that the state will be hit by at least 3 major hurricanes in a single year is 0.0016. Now going back to our question, we're going to see that that is our probability. The next question says, does this indicate that the hurricane season several years ago in this state was unusual? Well, we need to compare this value, this probability, to 0.05. Well, 0.0016 is less than 0.05, therefore it is unusual. So we're going to say yes, the answer is it is unusual. Okay, now let's go to part D. Part D says, what is the probability that the state will be hit by at least 2 major hurricanes in a single year, as happened last year? So, again, we're going to use the Poisson probability distribution function and formula to find the probability that x is greater than or equal to 2 because it says at least 2. Now remember, at least, we're going to use the complement rule to obtain the value for an at least probability for a Poisson process. So, the probability of x being greater than or equal to 2 is equal to 1 minus the probability of x being, what's the opposite of greater than or equal to 2? It is less than 2. So, it's going to be 1 minus the probability of 0 plus the probability of 1 because we cannot include the value of 2 because it doesn't have an equals underneath that inequality sign. So, we have already found the results for these. We know that we're going to get 1 minus, well, P of 0 is 0.7973870. We know that P of 1 is 0.180540466. When we add those together, we're going to get 0.977927466. So we're going to take 1 and subtract that number to give us 0.02207225534. And we're going to round that to 4 decimal places, which gives us approximately 0.0221. Thus, the probability that the state will be hit by at least 2 major hurricanes in a single year is 0.0221. Now, going back to our question, we're going to see that that represents our probability. Now we need to determine if this indicates that the hurricane season this year in this state was unusual. So going back to our probability, 0.0221 is less than 0.05, therefore it is unusual.